Hi, how are you, Ms. Coulter? We're just going to do a quick introduction here, and then I'll pass the floor over to you.
Okay.
Welcome, everybody. My name is Eduardo Moret, and I'm a digital reporter at Campus Reform. I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight for the Leadership Institute's Digital Town Hall with Ann Coulter. First off, I want to thank the Leadership Institute's donors, without whom this event would not be possible. I also want to remind everyone that the Leadership Institute is a 501c3 nonpartisan organization. We don't promote policy or political candidates, and the views put forth by our guests are theirs and theirs alone. For more information on the Leadership Institute's training webinars and digital town halls, visit leadershipinstitute.org. Throughout tonight's event, there will be an opportunity to ask our guests questions. To ask Ms. Coulter a question, simply click the Q&A box in Zoom and type your question. We will also be posting a link to a survey once the event is completed. We'd appreciate if you give us some feedback on tonight's event. Lastly, for those of you who stay through tonight's event, one lucky winner will win a $25 Uber Eats gift card. We hope you use that to support local businesses during this time. Now for tonight's speaker, Ms. Ann Coulter. Ann Coulter is a conservative commentator and best-selling author of 13 New York Times bestsellers. She also writes a popular syndicated column that appears in Breitbart, The Daily Caller, and Town Hall. Coulter has been a major media personality for over 20 years when she first made her debut on MSNBC in 1996. So without further ado, I want to introduce Ms. Ann Coulter, and the floor is yours.
Hello, nice to have you here. I'm just sorry we're not in person because even though I can't see any of you, I'm guessing that very few of you are over 75 years old or morbidly obese, which means we could be meeting in person. We can certainly be going to beaches and parks, but we're in the middle of a media panic. I mean, it was bad, and we kind of knew that from the beginning, from the figures out of Italy, but now we've had more and more and more figures come in. And actually, I mean, even the New York Times slipped a fact into some of its coronavirus reporting recently. 2/3 of all cases in the US, 2/3 are in the Northeast. So while the average death rate in New York City is, I don't know, it's more than 100 per case, or per person out of 100,000. In Florida, California, Wisconsin, all of these states that are being browbeaten into staying shut down, it's 4 per 100,000. And I mean, consider Florida. The poor Governor DeSantis was viciously attacked for keeping the state open longer than others, even though we have spring break and lots of old people and cruise ships landing. Yet and still, you know, the average, or in 2018, the death rate from the seasonal flu was 14 per 100,000. Coronavirus deaths, Florida, 4 per 100,000. There's no reason to be shutting down the economy, other than it's fun for the media. They make a lot of money and get to keep their jobs and work from home. Everybody, well, except me, is tuned into what's happening, all the latest updates. Okay, I stay updated until Friday afternoon when I have my usual hit on WMALDC with Larry O'Connor. Lots of fun. I always feel like I should know what's going on in the world. As soon as that show is over, that's it. I'm listening to music, I'm drinking wine, I'm watching movies through the whole weekend until I have to start thinking about my column again. So I hope you're all using your time equally productively. I mean, a lot of people I think are thinking about, how is this going to affect President Trump's reelection? I have been bearish on Trump's reelection for some time, having nothing to do with coronavirus. And I really think the whole coronavirus thing is just a microcosm of his presidency. You want to strangle him, and then you see the media. So I think it all comes down to whether the election ends up being a referendum on all the people who hate Trump, i.e. the media, or Trump himself. If it's a referendum on Trump, hard to see him winning. If it's a referendum on the media, they don't disappoint. They absolutely do not disappoint. I mean, look at, I want to get to your questions, and both you, Eduardo, and also questions in the audience, but I'll just end with, unless you want me to keep blathering. the media's treatment of this sexual harassment case, sexual assault, not a harassment, made by Tara Reade against former Vice President Joe Biden. They're the Democrats' presumable nominee. It's like Clinton all over again. We find out, it turns out the left really doesn't care about sexual assault. It's nothing. Sexual harassment, sexual assault laws are exclusively weapons to be used against Republicans. And I must say, I didn't believe the charges against Biden at first. For those of you who follow my work closely, you will know I was saying, well, the media ought to be reporting it. They were more credible from the beginning than Christine Blasey Ford's accusations against Kavanaugh, and that was, a 9/11 attack the way it was covered. But I didn't believe it, having worked on the Senate Judiciary Committee and seen Biden. Maybe he was getting a little older. But at this point, it's kind of hard not to believe it. She told her neighbor at the time, her neighbor hates Trump, wants Biden to beat Trump. And she says, yeah, he told me about it at the time. We have that phone call from Tara Reade's mother into Larry King Live. And stunningly, CNN took that video down. It's unbelievable. Took that video down. And the media, they are pedal to the metal covering this one up. Today's excuse is to explain why it was all in for Christine Blasey Ford and Tara Reade. She's a lying whore. Is that, well, with a Supreme Court justice, you could pick anyone in the whole country, whereas with a presidential nominee, it's just down to one of two people, which I don't really understand. I mean, Supreme Court justice, once he's chosen, there's only one choice, him or not him. And I suppose the presidential nominee could equally be anyone in the whole world. But anyway, that's where we're going with the left covering up for Joe Biden. Remember that whenever, and also, I mean, if there's this big difference between the president and a Supreme Court nominee, why were they so big on illegally running that Access Hollywood tape with Trump commenting, I say again, not admitting to a sexual assault, as has been repeated endlessly in the media, but rather saying what you can get away with as a celebrity. It was sort of a jejune point, stated boorishly, as we have come to expect, although it wasn't said publicly. I mean, it was private conversation. It was illegally taped, or at least taped and then produced to the public, and they sure ran with that. So as long as the media is going to keep being this crazy, they may end up giving Trump another term.
All right, thank you, Anne. We've got a lot to cover, so I'm going to kick off the Q&A here. And just a reminder to those of you asking questions, be sure to say your university and your university student group. So, Anne, I want to start off with a question about one of your favorite topics, immigration. You often talk about how, for people who care about the Bill of Rights, the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, how none of that will matter if our immigration problems are not addressed. And so there are a lot of college students on the call today who fight for these rights on college campuses. So I was wondering if you could start off by explaining what you mean by that. If you can explain why immigration trumps a lot of those other issues in a lot of ways and why it's so important.
Right, that's a great question. It drives me crazy how immigration is just treated as, one of many issues, pro-life, cut taxes, and should we deal with immigration? That's just something for the dirty working class. No, immigration determines who lives here and who votes here. Look at California. California gave us Ronald Reagan, Richard Nixon, gave us anti-tax initiatives, gave us one of my favorite rules, right on red. I'm not sure that has anything to do with immigration. But when California had an initiative, they have this initiative process back in the 90s, which is lied about constantly. And it was, California was one of the states that was first overwhelmed with illegal immigrants. And it was whether California taxpayers should keep paying welfare to illegals, passed overwhelmingly with a majority of blacks, a majority of Asians, a majority of whites, and basically the same percentage of Hispanics Republicans always get, about 30%. Same as McCain, Bush. Trump got a little bit more of the Hispanic vote, but kind of statistically insignificant. 30%, we're going to get 30% of the Hispanic vote. So it passed overwhelmingly, but a federal district court judge, ACLU immediately sued. Federal district court judge said it was somehow unconstitutional for California taxpayers to decide how their tax money should be spent, whether it should be spent on illegals. And the only reason it went away was because then Governor Gray Davis was elected, later recalled, but still he dropped the lawsuit because California was the one bringing the lawsuit. As a consequence of this one federal judge overturning how the people had voted, California has gone, I believe it's now majority Hispanic. I know it's minority white. So plurality Hispanic. And you can see what that state looks like. It looks like Venezuela. That is your future America. We've seen it in state after state after state. Colorado, Virginia is gone. And you know, the media, even conservative media, they'll always come up with some excuse other than immigration. And yet, if you look at the numbers, it's immigration, immigration, immigration. I mean, Virginia, for example, that is attributed to, all those government workers who have moved to Northern Virginia. No, most of the government workers in Virginia work on a naval base. I had the number in one of my columns, so I don't have the number exactly right now, but it used to be that the number of foreign-born in Virginia, it was some tiny number, something like, 1 out of every 200 Virginians was foreign-born. And now it's some enormous number, like 1 of every 7 Virginians was foreign-born. Suddenly, goes very left-wing. Now, obviously, love Hispanic Republicans, love Asian Republicans, but they are not a majority of Asians or Hispanics. And I just want Republicans to learn to do math. Getting 10% more of the Hispanic vote isn't going to help you unless we're bringing in immigrants who are voting 51% or more for the Republicans. We are bringing in people who are going to make Republicans lose. And there is no immigrant group, I believe, in the history of the country that has been as Republican as the native born. And not really surprisingly, I mean, freedom is as I think Benjamin Franklin said, freedom's a wonderful thing, but it's very hard to get used to. And so in poll after poll after poll, you see that majorities of Asians, Hispanics, do not care about the Second Amendment. Oh no, absolutely, no, that's going. That is going. They may say, they're pro-life, but they don't vote on it. So wherever you see law, and that's why we need to stop the flow. Convert the ones already here, get them used to freedom and the whole American thing. Turn them into good Republicans. But for now, we're doing this, the Sorcerer's Apprentice thing. They're pouring in as we're trying to convert the ones already here.
That's a fascinating point. I want to get to our first question from the audience, from Brett Oregon, who goes to Jacobs High School. So I'm going to allow him to take the floor here and ask this question. Brett, are you there? Maybe he's not. Okay, so I'll just read it for you. Any advice for someone facing judgment and hatred from school administrators and students for their conservative principles?
Oh, congratulations, Brett. You're a fine young man. Don't believe anything your teachers tell you. If they were accomplished, they wouldn't still be teaching you. Their objective is just to twist and bend young minds. Though, I mean, it's not advice I took myself, but I'll do as I say, not as I do. You may as well just suck up to them, write, BS articles that you'll get an A on, get good grades, make a lot of money, and buy yourself a senator.
All right, so our next question, I think he's ready to go, so it will be a live questions from Arik Schneider. He is a campus reform correspondent from UCLA. So Arik, take it away.
Hi, Ms. Coulter. Thank you so much for doing this. We really appreciate when you come on and you're able to tell us so much about how the world works. My question for you is that we've seen an escalation of the tension between American political parties. As someone who's on the front line of politics, can you see a return to more civilized discussion in the future, or are we heading for ever increasing conflict?
That's a really good question. I mean, that's part of what worries me about this upcoming election, that I feel like the media is holding the public hostage, and telling the public there will be nonstop hysteria if you reelect Trump. Just sign on this line here, just get rid of him, and then, oh, we'll go back to, peace, and everything will be nice. We'll tell you how wonderful Joe Biden is. And I mean, obviously that's not going to work on me. I don't think it's going to work on you, Eric. But there are probably a lot of independents and people who don't care about politics who are just thinking, oh, please just make it stop. I don't care who they run against Trump. I'm voting for anyone who is not Trump. Sort of the way, I mean, people felt about Hillary in the last election. I think that's part of the reason. I also think it was the media's hysterical overreaction. But part of the reason the Access Hollywood tape didn't have much effect, that I think a lot of Americans had spent 30 years hating Hillary Clinton. And their position was, don't even tell me who's running against her. I don't want to know. I'm voting for anyone who isn't Hillary. And I think the media is trying to create that circumstance right now with Trump. I really think the only way to make it go away is to make liberals go away. They're really enjoying their hysteria. So it's hard to see things changing. There's no reason that it should be like this. I, as many people know, I do have liberal friends, people who used to be sane, and some of the liberals are quasi-liberals, or I mean, a lot of us have been remarking on that, how it used to be fun to go out with people with different political beliefs, and you chit-chat and argue, but and it was all done in fun. It was an intellectual gamesmanship, or exercise, let's say. And wow, in the era of Trump, that is not possible. So I don't think we're just going to roll over and die if all their little tricks against Trump work, and also him not keeping his promises. But wow, I wish we could go back to that. Let's hope we can, with or without Trump.
Yeah, I think most of us agree. Hopefully we can go back to an era where political discourse is allowed. So our next question is from Emma Ray Phillips at Brown University. Emma, how about you tell us what student group you're with there, and then you can ask Anne your question.
Hi, Ms. Coulter. Thank you for being here with us. I'm a huge fan of yours. Like he said, I'm a first-year student at Brown University, where I'm a part of Young Americans for Freedom. I'm actually our vice president there. And I would like to know how my student group can bring you to Brown once we reopen in the fall.
Oh, excellent. I would love, no, I think Brown may be the one. No, I don't think, yeah, I've spoken at Dartmouth. I think it's the one Ivy League school where I've never spoken. Oh my God.
We definitely need you then.
Well, at the moment, Leadership Institute is sponsoring a lot of these speeches, and I would love to go to Brown. John Kennedy Jr. went there. Maybe you could take me on the Amy Carter tour. You young people don't even remember that, but it was sort of funny that it came out a few years after Jimmy Carter was president that Amy Carter was at Brown, and they printed up a list of the courses she was taking. I'm going to see if I can find this on Nexus. I may have put it in one of my books, but it was, I'm sure you're not taking these courses, Emma. It was literally things like basket weaving. She became a total hippie. But I'm very proud that you are a right-winger at Brown, and John Kennedy Jr. would have approved.
Thank you.
All right, up next we have a question from Madeline Hubbard at the University of Illinois. It's a twofold question, so Madeline.
Hello, I am president of the University of Turning Point USA at the University of Illinois. You were supposed to speak for us, but obviously that's not happening. So I guess now I can ask you, do you think that we should hold China accountable for the coronavirus? And if so, how? And then also, what's your favorite Grateful Dead song?
Excellent, excellent questions. I'm so sorry I didn't make it to your university. I hope I can in the fall. I mean, it's got to start hitting people soon that if you're not over 70, this virus does not pose a risk to you, or morbidly obese, but all these comorbidities. Anyway, yes. I've been very critical of Trump for not being rough enough on China. And it's probably worth mentioning here, I do not know why right-wingers are pushing this Chinese lab conspiracy theory. For 100 years now, pretty much every animal to human viral pandemic, just one after another, certainly the last couple of decades, has come from the wet markets in China. And it sort of annoys me, the Chinese lab theory, because it seems to dovetail with, sorry if any of you are big Cato fans, but the libertarian Cato view of the world that, oh, we're all alike, cultures are the same. No, we can bring people from all over the world to take American jobs. It's just they're bad leaders. Well, I don't know, that's what we were told about, Iraq and Afghanistan. No, I never believed it with Afghanistan. I believed it with Iraq, that, oh, we just need to take out the leader and things will be fine. No, cultures are different, people are different. They eat bats, they eat live octopi, they eat, birds in shells. It's disgusting, and it's clearly disgusting. Scientific, trust the science. It is spreading disease after disease. Our objective after this one, not just ours, not just the United States, the entire world has got to come together. And the same way we had to shut down the Al-Qaeda training camps, shut down the wet markets. That's our objective. And then step 2, this came up at Trump's press conference today, and I think it's a fine idea. Maybe you don't want to say it yet, though I think Trump has been a little too friendly to China. Someone said, should we cancel some of our debt to China to make them pay for this? And yeah, I think we should. He said, oh, I'll do it through tariffs. No, I think a little more aggressive than that. The main way I think we should punish China, which is only partially punishment and partially keep your campaign promises, is to bring our manufacturing home. It is, I mean, not only has it hollowed out America, hollowed out the middle class of America, it was a promise Donald Trump ran on. He's done nothing to fulfill it. But now we see how important it is to make our own pharmaceuticals, our own drugs. How about our own steel? What if we get in a war with China? Right now, they're overcharging us or threatening to withhold the masks that they make. They make like 90% of our drugs. The New York Times had a list of some of them that I put in a column. Aspirin, penicillin, all these heart medications, it's all made in China. And in my first column on the subject, I went through a lot of the stuff that gets made in China and comes to this country and kills, poisons, sickens Americans. There was this Chinese drywall. I think this was in the 80s. All these people are building brand new houses, and suddenly the homeowners are smelling a disgusting smell. They're getting sick. It costs millions upon millions of dollars to rip all this Chinese drywall out because it was made with something ridiculous. They told us with some toxic substances. They sold us dog food that killed the dogs. I've noticed this going back a few years, that whenever I buy, I just happen to have a bad run on this, buying electronics. I don't know what it was, lamps, phones, iPhone stuff, plugs, whatever it was, hair blow dryers. And they all work for about 3 months and then die. And I'd have to go on and buy a new one. So I started searching for China. Is this made in China? Would it tell me where it was made? And Amazon hides that information. But in searching for it myself, I noticed everyone is asking Amazon that. As you know, when you buy Amazon products, there are questions. You can skim through the questions, see what the answers are. People would ask over and over again, is this made in China? Is this made in China? Is this made in China? So I'm thinking that Amazon lets us search for products prime, not prime, gluten-free, calories, price. How about throwing in made in China? Not made in China, X percentage made in China, and, you know, throw in the percentage that it was made in the United States of America. That's what I would mostly do, mostly to help America, because I also don't want our manufacturing in Mexico. It's one thing to have a little bit of trade, to have, you know, women having boutique shops selling sandals from India or something, but when so much of the crucial products we rely on, and that we rely on to employ our fellow Americans, and we need them employed so they can buy our stuff, it shouldn't be made elsewhere. I'm 100% with Alexander Hamilton. We should make the stuff we need ourselves. Oh, favorite Grateful Dead song. There are so many. I was recently listening to Loose Lucy, rarely played in concert, and that's a fun song.
So I guess bottom line, we wouldn't catch Anne shopping at a wet market. But next question is from Zach Taylor at the University of Michigan. Zach.
Hi, Ms. Coulter. Thanks a lot for being here. I'm a first-year student at the University of Michigan and a member of the Turning Point USA chapter. My question was, as a student, I've seen how much of a bias, obviously, there is against conservatives on campus. And I'm interested in your experience, and I was wondering if there has been a change since you went to the University of Michigan.
Excellent question, and both in answer to your question and the high school kid who called in, I just remembered one actually good piece of advice I have, and that is, which you have already done with Turning Point USA, and that is to find some fellow patriots to associate with. It's a lot more fun making fun of liberals when you're not just doing it in your head, when you can sit with your friends and laugh about it, when you can go out to dinner and make fun of these people. And that, I mean, that's why part of what I love about giving college speeches is the dinners with the college Republicans, where I just get the most amazing stories. I think there has not been a Republican dinner I have gone to at a college campus where I didn't have at least one student, often several, and they just, you know, laugh about it, who would tell me in, you know, such and such a class, expository writing, they were getting A, and now we want you to write a persuasive piece. Show us how to write a persuasive piece. And the kid would write about, you know, Second Amendment rights, why we shouldn't have gun control, or pro-life. Suddenly, F. That's why I say, just scam them. So you're just, I couldn't do it myself, so I'm giving you advice I didn't follow. But one of my friends graduated #2 in his class from University of Michigan Law School. One of my friends up there, and he'll come when I speak up there. You can meet him. It was a gag for him. He knew how the professors, I mean, a lot of classes, property, there's no really political aspects to it unless it's environmentalism. But he would just write his papers the way he knew he wanted the professor to write them, and time after time. And the book award goes to, that's when the student gets the highest grade, the book award. He's just won book award after book award. So if you can stomach it, that's a funny way to do it. Just scam your teachers. I guess if you're involved in the leadership of Turning Point USA, that's going to be a little harder. You're going the flamboyant route, as I did. It's a lot of fun, but make sure you have your circle of friends. That makes it much funner and kind of a belly laugh.
That's great advice. Thank you, Zachary. Here's a question from Corey Paredes in the chat box. He goes to UPenn, and he wants to know, what strategies do you believe are most effective for regaining control of the false narratives we see in the media and online?
That is a really good question. I mean, we have to put down the media like a rabid dog. It's got to be stopped. What that means precisely, I was just thinking with this, and if you haven't followed this, you probably have. Maybe you haven't. Maybe you've been listening to music, drinking wine, and watching movies like I have, if you don't have to be on radio. I have a real treat for you if you don't know about this. If you remember early on the whole coronavirus business, the couple in Arizona who listened to Trump and they were such, moron Trump supporters. They drank hydroxychloroquine and then we found out they didn't actually drink hydroxy, whatever it is, chloroquine. They drank fish tank cleaner. The woman, the couple both drank it, but the woman, I don't know, she somehow survived, her husband died. Now the woman's being investigated for murder, and the interesting updates on that, thanks to the Free Beacon and fabulous reporter there, is that for one thing, the guy who allegedly drank this, he didn't have coronavirus, he didn't have any flu, he was fine, he had hurt his leg and said he wanted to go to the doctor. His wife was mad at him for that because she'd already done all the hoarding of food. She was all ready for the quarantine. So she mixed up the koi pond cleaner, put it in his drink. All his friends have said there's no way he would have done this. He was a very smart man. He was a mechanical engineer. He worked at John Deere. And there was an arrest and prosecution of his wife for domestic violence. The neighbors all say, anonymously, that she was absolutely a monster to him in public. Anyway, quite an interesting follow-up, and it takes, oh, sorry, I forgot the most important thing, that we know the story was untrue at the time. If you were watching media, especially MSNBC, there was so much hilarity about, these moron Trump voters, they hear him say something on stage and they go out and drink this stuff, and they're ending up dying, taking his medical advice because they're zombies. They hang on anything he says. Turns out the woman is a liberal Democrat who's donated, unless the names are wrong on the donations, has recently, a very virulent anti-Trumpster has donated to anti-Trump organizations and Democrats. So at least the story about, we believed Trump, that at least we know is untrue so far. Anyway, hearing about this story, I was thinking, I just want to round up every rich person I know and say, stop donating to the crap you're donating to and fund investigative journalists on our side, because the media we're living with out there, where was their follow-up? Why didn't they? We hear about this couple that drank allegedly they followed Trump's advice, i.e. drank fish cleaner. We hear about that for weeks to denounce Trump. Now it's not looking at all like what they said. And it takes a reporter from the Washington Beacon, bless them. I don't know if you remember, it may have been before a lot of your time, but there was this wild man, Chuck Johnson. He was a Daily Caller, then Breitbart, but he wrote all these exposés on things, often on the journalists themselves, what I've always wanted to do. They're so high and mighty. But he relied on donors. I don't really know what happened to him. I know he's still out there. I don't think he's still doing that, but that is what we need. Kamikazes who are willing to do this stuff. And there are plenty of wealthy right-wingers, but I think like so many Republicans, their side, leftists, progressives, communists, they're the activists. They're going into teaching. They're going into the media. Our side is going into making stuff, starting businesses, and they're too busy to pay a lot of attention. They know that, well, by and large, I want to vote for a Republican, I guess I'll give a donation to the Republican National Committee. But they're often swept up in just what everyone else is giving to. Getting the rich people to fund some serious investigative journalists would be extremely useful. In taking down the media, and it needs to be taken down. It needs a bullet to the back of the head. They're absolutely untrustworthy liars. They're absolute liars.
Well, I think most in our audience would agree we need more honesty in the media. Our next question is from Isidore Johnson. So Isidore, how about you tell us where you go to school and what group you're a part of, and then ask Anne your question.
Let's see, this is working, right? You can hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Isidore. I go to UConn. I'm a sophomore. Political science econ major and vice president of Young Americans for Liberty at my school. My question for you is, what intellectual influences formed your political philosophy? Is your philosophy more systems level or object level? And what are its limitations?
Ooh, that's an interesting question. I don't even know what systems level and objects level means. You're much smarter than I am. That's a very good question. I grew up reading National Review, not my favorite publication these days, but at the time, you know, that was, as far as we knew, the only game in town, proper New Canaan family. So I grew up reading National Review. Joe Sobran was in National Review. I remember he was always funny and stunning. Buckley was not that good a writer, actually, but at least, you know, he was publishing the magazine. Frank Meyer was in that magazine. So a lot from just as a kid reading National Review. I read Barry Goldwater's Conscience of a Conservative, written by Brent Bozell Jr., the father of the Brent Bozell we all know right now, who was apparently a genius. I remember it being a very good book. And then, what else did I read? Oh, Milton Friedman, read Milton Friedman, still in high school. And there was a Bill Simon book. I just found it. I was going through some of my books and papers from when I was a little kid in New Canaan and came across it, and I'm saving it. I should probably read them again, because who knows, the stuff you liked when you were a kid, but I think they're all pretty good. Then, and this is why this is an advantage for those of you going the flamboyant route that I did, and not the sneaky get good grades route. I developed a lot of my opinions arguing with liberals at college, both and in high school, teachers, professors, classmates. Some things I probably wouldn't. I was definitely more libertarian then, very, very libertarian then. But still, you develop your ideas. I mean, that's why it's too bad we can't argue with liberals anymore. They'd learn, we'd learn. We might come together with some solutions, or at least some common ground. But a lot of it was and I don't mean arguing like arguing in a fighting way, but you know, discussing, making your points, and what about this, and what about that. And then beyond that, at law school, I liked the law and econ people, the ones out of University of Chicago. That and the classes like contracts and property were the only ones that made sense to me. Constitutional law. Wait, what? The privacy right comes from, where is that in the penumbras? I remember being utterly confused by all the areas of law that liberals had gone into, and coming up with the decisions they wanted through smoke and mirrors. But economics, though, I never took an economics course. That was at least, you know, that's comprehensible, the law and economics. You have the law here because you want the result there, and more people can get together and negotiate for this result, and so you give them more power. At least it all made sense. And I guess that's about it. Should probably have a better answer.
We have a question from the chat again from Destiny George. She at the Moravian College Republicans. How do we talk to and respond to feminist and liberal professors who continue to propagate their liberal agenda on campus without fearing for our grades or being attacked by fellow students, especially on a small college campus where everyone knows each other? So that's
Okay, you're all going the flamboyant route. I guess I salute you. I just think I shouldn't be advising it. Again, the best thing is to have friends. Simpatico friends. That makes it easier. I talk to them like they are children, because they are. So if you had younger brothers and sisters and you needed them to do something, you know, keep the objective in mind, but you can be teasing, you can be humorous, you can smile at them, you can cajole them, maybe offer them a piece of candy. But it really, it does become like arguing with children, because you guys aren't conservatives because, oh, well, it's easy, I just rolled into it, everybody else is a conservative. You're a conservative because you thought about it, because other people saying things didn't make sense to you. So you have more well thought out beliefs. A lot of them are going with very many of them, most of them I would guess, are going with the flow. They're the apple polishers. A lot of them probably don't even believe what they're saying, but it's the path of least resistance. It makes them look like good people. And when you run up against that brick wall, where did I see that recently? I remember thinking, oh, I know, but I can't say. When you run up against an argument where the person isn't a stupid person and isn't making sense, you're not arguing, you're not having an argument. You are running up against that person's ego. And that person's self-impression, and you're just wasting your time. I suppose you could make fun of them and call them apple polishers and point out that they are not virtuous. They are egomaniacs who just want to go with the flow and not particularly interesting at that. Yeah, go straight for the ego after that.
Our next question is from Chloe Sparwath. She's got a video question. So Chloe.
Uh-oh.
Oh, can you hear me?
There, now I can hear you, yes.
Also, I was like, what did I do wrong? Okay, so it often seems like there are not as many women in the Republican Party as there are in the Democratic Party. So first of all, why do you think that is? And then second, what would you say to Republican women who feel outnumbered by both their Democratic counterparts in politics and then also outnumbered by men in their own party?
Well, being outnumbered by men, I have found, is always a great thing, Chloe. In fact, you should probably look into going into engineering or something. Being outnumbered by men is a blast. So that's to your advantage. I think, well, as you kids probably know, once women get married, they're more right-wing than men. It's single women who are the most left-wing. And looking at that fact, also the kinds of professions women go into has led me to believe that men need to support women. And when women don't have men supporting them, my own case to the contrary, they tend to look to the government to support them. And that's why they're always for more, child benefits and more food stamps and more, oh, please protect me, please send me more and more money. So the men listening right now, the best thing you can do for the future of the country is to be a gentleman, find a nice girl to marry and marry her. That's the best thing you can do to convert women, because once women have a man, and I'm not saying women shouldn't have jobs. I have a job, sort of. Not a traditional job. Once women have the protection of being supported while they're doing something that makes it very hard to have a really hardcore job, bearing and having children, they really care about protecting their children and protecting and some of whom are going to be boys, and their husbands' jobs. At that point, women tend to be much more conservative. I mean, for example, you always hear that more women abortion is a woman's issue. And it's not really true, although the polls, different polls taken by different people asking different questions will show you different things. No matter who takes the poll, more women are against abortion than men. I mean, abortion is a convenience for cad men to go out and sleep with a lot of women and not have to take responsibility for it. So by instinct, I think women have a very conservative outlook on life. And it's often something unfortunate in their lives that leads them to be very left-wing.
And before we get to our next question, I want to ask you a follow-up on that. You've talked a lot about, finding like-minded friends on campus and things like that, but I think a lot of conservative students are the minority on campus. What would you say about, dating across political lines? Do you have any advice in that realm? Because I think it's something that a lot of Gen Zers and millennials face in an age where, people are unable to look past someone's political views. And so there's that initial, line, that barrier that's difficult to break.
I don't think things have changed so much that, and especially because I've noticed right-wing girls are very, very pretty. I don't think they're going to have any trouble getting liberal men to date them. And then they can smack them over the head and convert them. Women tend to be, the liberal women, at least from what I've read and heard about. I have not tried to date a liberal woman, or any woman. So I have no personal experience with this, but from what I hear, they're much more, oh, I could never date someone. I mean, I'm suspicious of that. People are attracted to whom they're attracted to. When I was a smoker, and don't smoke, even though there is some evidence that smoking protects you from coronavirus. It's actually true. It ran in the New York Times this week. I tweeted it. When I was a smoker, I was always dating men, or boys really, who said, I'd never date a smoker. If they had, whatever those dating sites are back then, it would have been no smokers. You don't date a smoker until you meet a smoker you want to date. And I think it's the same thing, I suspect, though liberal women might be a little harsher than that. But if they like you, they'll probably date you. And it's probably very useful to get conservative men dating liberal women so you can convert them. I really find it hard to believe that any woman, I don't care how liberal she is, could want to date a liberal man. Oh, can you imagine? Oh no, they're all waiting for a real man, a chivalrous macho man, and they're not going to get that on the left.
That's a good point. Our next question from the chat room from Chloe Christina Houston. I just read your book Slander, and it's crazy how similar everything is from what you wrote back in the early 2000s. What do you think has changed since then?
Oh, that's a good question. That was a blockbuster book. A lot of it people hadn't recognized yet. Everyone yelled at me when I wrote that book. Now it's just, much of it is taken for granted. The internet, which was big in '94, but it's much bigger now, much bigger, which is why I'm worried. I mean, I've been predicting for a while that if there's any possibility Trump is going to get reelected, we're all getting thrown off Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. They went after Milo Yiannopoulos. They went after Gavin McInnes, Laura Loomer. I think I'm hanging by a thread. I think all of us are hanging by a thread. And I'm very careful in the things I tweet. Twitter seems to be better than Facebook. But that, I'm trying to remember a lot of the things about, TV was much bigger back in 2002, even though the internet was getting really, really big then. But as I recall, in 2002, it was pretty much the Drudge Report and back then Free Republic. Now there are a lot of right-wing sites. There are a lot of right-wingers on Twitter you can follow. There are a lot of right-wingers with their YouTube videos. And in fact, having gone through the period when it was just Free Republic and Drudge, a lot of times I'm looking at stuff on the internet thinking, I can't believe we're allowed to find out the truth this way. The powers that be are going to have to put a stop to this. They cannot let this continue. The internet is a really wonderful resource. And you hear everybody talking about, oh, we need a Manhattan Project for the coronavirus. I want a Manhattan Project for when they throw us all off Twitter.
I think we have time for one or two more quick questions here. This one is from Rachel at the University of Washington. To what extent would you make banning birthright citizenship as detailed in the 14th Amendment retroactive to include the children and grandchildren of illegal immigrants?
Well, once the 14th Amendment is interpreted properly, I don't think children or grandchildren, I mean, no Supreme Court has said that the children of illegal aliens are citizens. It was dropped into a footnote in a Justice Brennan opinion in the 80s, and people just act like that's the law, but Congress has never, We've got to make the children of illegal alien citizens. I mean, that's what drives me crazy. Apart from how it's wrecking our country and turning over our sovereignty to foreigners. I mean, it's a crazy policy, but it's like Roe v. Wade in that way. It insults me intellectually that Americans are supposed to believe at the end of the Civil War, the top thing Americans were thinking about. Now, if an illegal alien, 8 months pregnant, runs across the border and drops a baby, we gotta make that kid a citizen. You're kidding, that isn't already the law? No, getting an amendment passed takes a major national feeling. We had just fought a civil war over slavery. We get these Civil War amendments attached to the Constitution. It was about slavery. That's why it refers to the jurisdiction of the state. And in point of fact, in Supreme Court cases afterwards, I think afterwards, yeah, it has to be afterwards, they found that John Elk, an Indian, who was not born on the Indian reservation, but was born, I guess, in the United States of America, but he was a citizen of the reservation. They found that, no, you're not a citizen. You're not a citizen, because the 14th Amendment is about slavery. In case after case after case, that's what the Supreme Court found. Brennan drops this footnote in, and people just act like it's true, and our immigration service acts like it's true. But if you're an illegal alien and have a baby, you're both illegal. If that baby has a baby, they're illegal. I mean, once that is clarified, it's not like I hate the people, though I do hate the dreamers. It's a system that has to be stopped. Perhaps some of them are wonderful people and we would want them as our fellow citizens, but this isn't how you decide citizenship. And since I just dropped that in, I'll go back to that. We'll put a pin in that point. The reason I hate the dreamers and I want them deported even before the felons is, at least when you catch, an illegal alien felon, at least their attitude is, okay, you got me. No, these dreamers are illegal aliens and they're showing up, I demand that you give me citizenship. How dare you? They're interrupting. I mean, they're heckling Nancy Pelosi. Okay, I like that. But they're heckling Republican congressmen and showing up on the cover of Time magazine and going on TV, bitter and vindictive. No, it's their arrogance that wants me to deport the dreamers first. Some of the illegals we might like and we might let back in.
So I think we have time for one last question. Justine Brooke Murray, who's also a correspondent for us at Campus Reform. So Justine, if you want to ask that question as quickly as you can, go right ahead.
Sure. Hi, Ms. Coulter. My school, Syracuse University, recently received nearly $40 million of federal funding in 2017 and just scored almost another $10 million in coronavirus relief funding. Our chancellor sent us a school-wide email claiming that we're now struggling financially due to the pandemic and that we have to implement a faculty hiring freeze in response. Yet he recently spent $5.6 million on diversity and inclusion initiatives, which included funding for new diversity hires. And Syracuse has previously spent another $5 million on a social justice center back in 2017. So given that many colleges toss a lot of funding at leftist programs, diversity officer salaries, and social justice courses, do you think it's appropriate to provide coronavirus relief funding to these schools? And on top of that, do you even think these colleges should receive funding in the first place?
If I answer that completely honestly, he may prevent me from coming and speaking there sometime. So what I'll say is, you would think that it's a great question. You want to write it up. That is fantastic. A couple of things. One is, you would think that in a crisis like this, where, we're the essential workers and we love our essential worker. I noticed that Governor Cuomo's, when he talks about these hardworking state employees, as always, he talks only about firemen, policemen, and healthcare workers. And I keep tweeting out every time he's doing one of these. How about the 8,000 diversity coordinators? Could we give them Could we at least cut their salaries during this crisis? No, it's ridiculous how much. You would think that in a crisis, we would determine, diversity counselors, can't eat it, doesn't cure a disease, isn't really helping anything. You would think they'd be the first to go. Unfortunately, I mean, if Trump loses, whoa, it's going to be Biden and, who knows, Kamala Harris, pedal to the metal, all you're going to have. We're going to be funding diversity counselors from now until the end of time. But you reminded me that one thing that makes me very optimistic that I will be able to resume my college speeches in the fall is that I didn't know this. I don't have a lot of friends who have kids who are applying to college right now, but I talked to one of them earlier this week, and he said, Anne, you have no idea what's happening at the colleges. All these colleges, they're not saying whether they're gonna start up again in the fall. Kids are saying, well, fine, I'm gonna take a year off. Dad's not gonna pay $200,000 in tuition so that I can sit in my room and take classes online. It's kind of exposing that maybe we don't need to go to college at all. College is an experience. It's a 4-year vacation. It's a blast. You can learn some stuff along the way, but the main thing is being there with fellow students and the sports. And college is a blast. It was the best time of my life. I wish I could just go back and do it over and over and over again. So kids aren't wanting to go. Now I'm hearing that kids are getting off wait lists. They have blasted through the wait list. Colleges are begging students to come this fall. I bet I was just, when he was going through all this, how colleges are going to be in trouble. They're going to be anxious to reopen. And point one, I imagine a lot of them, as the New York Times and MSNBC were going after Jerry Falwell Jr. for opening up Liberty University, a lot of these college presidents across America were saying, oh no, please let it work. Please let it work. We've got to reopen in the fall or we will have no jobs, no money. They're being sued, by the way, a lot of these colleges because they're refusing to refund room and board. I mean, I can all kind of understand prorating the board or I don't know, maybe the room, but the board, they're not paying for the food anymore. Anyway, I digress. So I'm thinking the college campuses are going to be very, very anxious to restart. And as I said at the beginning, there's absolutely no reason for them not to restart. If they have some really old professors, I mean, some of these schools do, some emeritus types, okay, you're not going to be able to take a class from that guy until your sophomore or junior year. He's going to stay off campus. But young, healthy college kids, there is virtually no danger to you from coronavirus. There's virtually no danger to anyone under the age of 45. Very little danger from 45 to age 65 unless you have one of these. Well, and also very little danger for anyone who doesn't have hypertension, is obese, or have diabetes. And we have the numbers on this now. The Journal of what is it, the American Medical Association's JAMA, I'm sure you've heard of that famous publication among doctors, very well respected. They just came out with a study, I was tweeting, that they say 94, and there are other figures put it at 97%. 94% of the coronavirus deaths, or Wuhan virus deaths to be precise, in New York City, the heart of this, right, either 94 or 97%, the ones who died had at least one of the comorbidities. Most of them hypertension, obesity, and diabetes. Very few young people, very, very few young college students have that. There is no reason not to open colleges. There's absolutely no reason not to be opening the grade schools. That's unbelievable that they're not opening the grade schools. Again, if you have an older teacher, okay, that teacher is going to stay home. If you have a teacher who's obese, that teacher is going to stay home. But people know that. They can protect themselves. Now it turns out there have been a couple of studies out of, one out of Australia and I think one out of Japan. It turns out young people, you can't even transmit the virus. You are at no danger personally and you're giving it to no one. You may have seen that article, Switzerland is allowing grandkids to go hug their grandparents now because it turns out they don't transmit the virus. So I know the media wants to keep us all hysterical, but my guess is college presidents are going to want to open up again.
Well, yeah, time will tell on whether those campuses open up, and we've been following that at Campus Reform. And unfortunately, we're out of time. I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight, and I just want to leave you the floor if you have any last closing remarks, and then I ask everyone to stay on just for a minute after Anne's finished because we have a few closing announcements. But thank you so much, Anne, again for doing this.
Thank you. Sorry I went over my time. You will see I will often do that on your campuses as well, especially when I can actually see you and see liberals asking the questions. And I very much look forward to seeing you and the liberal protesters this fall. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. And then lastly, we just want to thank all of our Leadership Institute donors again tonight for making this possible and for making all of our digital town halls and trainings throughout the coronavirus possible. As we said, we do have a link in the chat box. We'd appreciate if you guys could give us a review from tonight's event. That's very helpful to us. And then we do have, I believe, the winner of the Uber Eats gift card just now. We are holding on for that.
Thanks so much for watching this video. To watch our latest video, click here. And to make sure you don't miss any future videos, be sure to subscribe.